I don't use Twitter that often anymore, but the fact that it says what's happening in the bar still where you're supposed to write the tweet, but they added an exclamation point after the question mark, really is jarring to me.
They're trying to get people excited again.
I can't possibly be excited. The UX is so bad. It's truly alarming.
Yeah, how did they ruin something so simple? Something that worked so elegantly for
They
so.
just didn't have to touch it at all. Like they just didn't have to change anything.
And by they you mean he, and by
I
he
do,
you
I
mean
do mean the man, the myth, the legend.
yes, the
Edward Cullen.
Little Elon. Hey, Christy.
Yeah, what's up?
Fart noise. Fart noise. Hey, by the way, fart noise. Anyone? Sexual reference?
Oh my goodness. Hi, welcome to Pizza Toast. I am on my last nerve with regard to what we're covering today. Usually what we do is we talk about YA and middle grade novels and the TV and movie adaptations thereof. But sometimes... Oh, my name's Christy.
My name's Phil.
And sometimes a property is such a juggernaut that we simply must cover its long tail in pop culture. And a big part of that long tail... Oh, Jacob has a really long tail.
He does have a really long tail. It's good for a couple of laughs.
Well, part of that long tail is sometimes parodies. And we've done this once before. We did it with the Hunger Games. There was a Friedberg and Seltzer in there, and there was some other guy's movie that we actually kind of liked, question mark?
Yeah, it's of questionable merit, that comment, but I agree more or less.
Graded on an incredible curve.
Yeah.
And this time we watched two movies. Enormous scare quotes around movies.
Yeah.
We watched another Friedberg and Seltzer.
Well, it's worth pointing out. I do need to point out that
Yes.
That there was a difference. There was something about the Starving Games that was different from this, and I can't remember what it was. I think
Did they just produce one of them rather than direct
They
it?
didn't produce the Starving Games. That's what it was. They were not the producers on it. Also, the Starving Games sitting at a 0% Rotten Tomatoes approval rating. Vampires suck. 4% approval rating.
Friedberg and Seltzer have anything to do with the Starving Games?
Yeah, they were the directors.
Okay, they did direct it, so they didn't produce it. Yeah, Vampires Suck. I just can't believe that we watched two movies and I preferred the Friedberg and Seltzer. Like, can't go. We also watched a film called Breaking Wind, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, we watched Vampires Suck, Breaking Wind, and then I made a noble effort to read some of the written Twilight parodies. I got only so far before giving up, because I only have so much time in my life and I only have so much tolerance for, I won't even say bad writing, I'll say writing that exists solely for its own purpose and stops being satirical after a while and just starts being someone trying to be a novelist. And I'm like, well, I don't have any patience for novelists. Give me some yucks here, people. Not creative writing. So I was talking with these movies though with my coworker the other day, because you said we like to look at a property's long tail, and there is something very telling about where a property like this stands in the public consciousness, and yet you can only really get by how people make fun of it. Particularly extremely middle of the road satire that is meant to appeal to people who might not have any idea what they're parodying. So you have to go for the lowest common denominator. And what sets these two movies above other Friedberg and Seltzer properties is that, like the Hunger Games, even more so than the Hunger Games, these are just parodying Twilight. Like, these are not a conglomeration of pop culture references. So they both really have to hone in on this one thing
Right, because it's not okay. So Meet the Spartans was technically a 300 parody, but it was mostly just a rundown of all pop culture at
Yes.
that point. Date movie, epic movie. These are like, these are pastiches.
Yeah.
These are
In the whoa, in the loosest sense of the term, pastiche.
they are grab bags. They are
Yes.
whatever movie was best to make fun of in the moment that they were filming. That's the one they're going to make fun of. And there are references to other movies in both of these, certainly.
But they're
They go a
they're
little
light.
harder, I think,
Yeah.
in Breaking Wind, but yeah. Yeah.
The parodies and other Friedberg and Seltzer movies tend to be, you only have to be familiar with the trailers to these
Yeah.
movies to get what they're, because I feel like that's all Friedberg and Seltzer watched and probably only had access to, considering like the timeliness with which these parodies had to come out. Something that will come up in Breaking Wind when the Breaking Dawn parody consists only of things that were visible in Breaking Dawn Part 1's first trailer.
What's interesting is we ended up watching parodies of okay, so the Friedberg and Seltzer covers the first two movies,
Yep.
and then
Which is, yeah.
it's a choice, and then the Breaking Wind covers, as you said, what's in the trailer, but mostly it covers Eclipse.
It covers against, which means that if you watch, like Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings and then the TV movie of Return of the King, they form a loose, like, complete series.
Yeah.
That by different creators, but
Yes. Did you watch them in that order? Because I did.
What
These two.
Oh yeah, yes, oh yeah, yes. These two. What's funny is, Vampires Suck gives lie to the idea that these movies needed individual films, because Vampires Suck covers the first two books pretty well. Like it tells the story of the first two movies in about an hour and a half.
It does. And it does so in a way that I mean, I'm going to be hard pressed to compliment like anything about these because of what they are, but it does so as elegantly as it possibly can. And it does it pretty quickly and efficiently, and with a few performances I don't hate. I don't hate. I mean, it helps that they have a couple people who are kind of bench strength, who are actual, like, comedic actors who will give it their all, even though they really don't have to. Because Diedrich Bader, who played the Snow character in Starving Games, is in here, and he's not doing a lot, but what he does is fun enough.
Yeah.
And then also Ken Jeong, who really is giving it his all, is playing the Aro stand-in.
Yeah. Oh, and Ike Barinholtz, who plays Jacob's father, just seems to be acting. He seems to be like...
Yeah.
Unfortunately, of course, as in almost all of these parody films, anytime they get... I spent most of the time, I think you did too, just sort of snorting.
Yeah.
In that way that it's like, I get what the joke is, and I get what they're going for, but 90% of the time, they'll set up a joke that's maybe clever, do it, and then undercut it, usually by calling attention to it, overplaying it, going on too long, not really like... The editing in these movies is terrible. Like, they don't know how long to hold on a joke. They assume, I don't know, like half the time it seems like they expect the audience is falling over themselves with laughter. But Vampires Suck is the most successful, especially in the first half of it, at recreating the actual feel of the first Twilight movie. It has a $20 million budget. And it shows. They spend time with establishing shots, with exteriors, like making you feel like you're actually in the first Twilight movie.
Right. And there are a few characters that the stand-ins for them are fairly accurate. The kid who plays Mike I
could have been the actual guy. It could have been the actual guy.
I liked the girl who played Bella.
She was going for what's her face from the Scary Movie franchises?
Anna Faris?
Anna Faris. She was clearly going for the I will be the next Anna Faris with her performance, because she's giving it her all and doing a pretty good Bella.
I don't think she's bad, and I think she does the because we're talking about like it's primarily about the first two movies, she can do the whole like the moving, the herky jerky
Yeah.
movement and the lip biting, and it doesn't feel off. The guy playing Edward is just kind of there. He's not doing the most in any way. Is he the one who's the voice of Anakin on the Clone Wars?
I was gonna say
the other guy.
the guy playing Edward. You mean Anakin Skywalker himself?
Yes.
Matt Lanter. Yeah, if you know Matt Lanter, he is Anakin Skywalker in all of the Star Wars animated things, and he appeared as a character in an episode of The Mandalorian.
I was gonna say he's in Mando once.
Yeah.
He doesn't do a lot, but honestly, Arpats doesn't do a lot in the first two movies, so
Right.
it's not like he had a ton to ape.
So I will say that Alana watched The Vampires Suck with me. She had started watching Twilight with Mitzi, and she considers Vampires Suck to be a better film than Breaking Dawn Part 2. She thought that it was just the actual actors playing all the roles because she was like, I don't know, I guess. And she slept through most of it and still considered it a better movie than Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Well, I think she's wrong. I do think this has its merits. As much as there are snort moments, like this hangs together. Like it's not. It has a structure.
Yes.
It's the beginning, a middle, and an end. There are times when they kind of go to the airplane well of jokes, like just the silliest things. Like there's a part where I think it's Diedrich Bader as the Charlie character and Ike Barinholtz as Jacob's father are talking about like people keep thinking Canadians are the ones who are wreaking all the havoc because Canadians feed on human flesh, are very pale, and Ike Barinholtz says, "You're not seeing the big picture," and then he's holding a poster that's Laurent, Victoria, and James, and Diedrich Bader is like, "Oh, that is a big picture," and that really got me. Like that was the one time I laughed out loud because that's a very silly, very broad joke that's gonna get me.
It's a clever joke. They play it straight, and they actually use the editing well for the reveal. Yeah, I remember that one and being like, okay. There's a Jonas Brothers joke that's played straight that made me laugh.
It's a pretty good joke.
It's the, you're this, you're this, you're this. Say it. I want to hear you say it. And instead of saying vampire, she says Jonas Brother. Mm-hmm. And that made me snort. But then it's undercut by Jacob going, what? No. And I'm like, yeah, we got it. She said the wrong thing. Like, that was the joke. I watched the unrated version.
I don't know if I did.
Did the sex doll have a bikini on, or was it fully nude?
I watched the unrated version.
Okay, so you saw the fully nude sex doll, as I did. In the rated version, the sex doll has a bikini on, and the rated version has a bunch of different jokes, usually just replacing profanity with a different word. Or just different cutaways. And also the theatrical version is in a different order. The theatrical version, the unrated version has this whole beginning in Italy. Well, not Italy. It's with the all of that's re-edited and in different places throughout the movie. Like but it's mostly the same film, just with a few more dirty jokes thrown in, a few more references to anatomy. Both of these movies don't know what to do with Charlie, so they just make him a pervert. Is kind of like, we'll just make him a pervert. He just likes to enjoy
Diedrich
sex.
Bader pervert is a lot easier. Like that's not as hard a pill to swallow for me. Also because the few times that it deviates from that, I think are like his best physical comedic moments. Like Bella rips his mustache off while he's teaching her how to be tough, and it's genuinely very gross, but also pretty funny.
Some of the best comedy moments for me are when they make direct reference to the original movie. There's a scene in the original movie that absolutely does not work because it is bad, and it is Jacob and Bella having a conversation in the foreground while Charlie and Jacob's dad, whose name I can never remember, Billy and Billy are in the background. masculinely palling around, like throwing fake punches at each other, and you can tell that the director was just like, I don't know, just guy around in the back. So they do that in this movie by having them full on physically assault each other in the background. It would play better if they weren't so many crazy sound effects. Like,
yeah.
but it actually got a laugh out of me
No,
because
it's pretty good.
I was hoping they'd go there, and they went there. Dare I say, Vampires Suck has an actual affection for the first couple of like, whoever was writing and doing the production design and stuff, it's in depth enough that I was like, there's attention to detail here that you don't get from you're just sort of like throwing up like costume shop characters on.
It doesn't feel
screen.
as mean or disdainful. It's more like, haha, this is a silly movie. Think about all the things about it that are silly. Here's here's Ken Jeong doing using a beer bong. I think maybe he does a keg stand at some point.
Hey, you know how Jacob's a werewolf? Well, what if he actually looked like a dog? What if he hiked his leg on a fire hydrant and chased a cat? But then also, Edward at one point catches a squirrel, so I'm like, the joke's undercut again. But then the squirrel turns into a vampire, which was pretty good.
I liked that. Vampires Suck has a good recurring gag where, because it's the first two movies, they're not going to explain why Rosalie hates Bella, but Rosalie hating Bella manifests itself in her attempting to murder Bella every time she's in the room, and instead hitting, like, Carlisle or Jasper with an axe. It's very silly. Which
is how they get those characters out of the movie for a while. They just have Rosalie accidentally kill them.
Pretty good. There aren't that many characters we focus on in these two movies. Therefore, there aren't that many we focus on the parody. There's some Alice. There's some Volturi. There's some high school students. They're a lot meaner in this.
She has to run the gauntlet of the popular kids in the beginning, and it gets increasingly violent as it goes along.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
I will say that because Twilight is a story that so much avoids sex deliberately, that's such a part of it, that opens itself up to a more sexualized movie because how can you ignore that? Like, that's half of the joke of people make fun of Twilight is it's such a chaste storyline on purpose. I wish they had been able to find both movies do the Bella wants sex so bad she dresses in a crazy costume and tries to seduce Edward gag. Like, they both do that. Neither of them pull it off particularly well, mostly because it's just kind of uncomfortable to see this actress, like, dressed in a scanty little
gross.
outfit.
I mean, again, I struggle to say much good about it at all, but, like, this is one of the weaker things for me where it's a very cheap gag, but I understand why they can't avoid it, because it's even funny in the movies and books when it's happening. Like,
I will say,
you can't get around it.
Vampires Suck has one real fart joke, as opposed to Breaking Wind, which, by the way, is mostly fart jokes. Vampires Suck has one fart joke, though, that made me roll my eyes and then honestly laugh out loud when I saw it, because it's Edward spying on Bella while she's asleep, which I thought was going to go in a gross direction, but doesn't. She's just being gross in her sleep, as a sleeper is.
Yeah.
She rolls over at one point, though, and he's kind of leaning down to look at her, and then she farts in her sleep, which makes him be like, ugh, not funny. But then he falls out the window backwards, which was so unexpected, it shocked a laugh out of me. I thought that was pretty well done.
I also kind of enjoyed that sequence because she does a lot of... It doesn't make any sense. She does a lot of different sleep disruption things in a row, and none of them would, like... They're not things that would happen one after another. Like, she's only wearing headgear for, like, one of them.
Which I appreciate. I do appreciate the Looney Tunes-esque, we don't need to maintain the injuries or whatever to a character beyond the gag. So, like, a person gets hurt, except for what's-his-face, who's there in the car accident scene, and they...
Yeah. It's I think his name is Eric in the movies. He is wearing like a neck brace and all kinds of corrective uh I guess casts and the like throughout the rest of the movie.
Which doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to happen. It's again, like, they belabor a joke that wasn't very funny to begin with. Now, there is a moment again that made me chuckle, which was when they parody the moment of the months going by.
Yes.
And Becca, her name is
Her name's Becca for some reason.
It's
yeah.
Becca. Yeah, they sort of changed the names, but not into funny things. They just changed the names. So, like, Alice becomes Iris. It's like, whatever.
Jacob's name is Jacob White.
Right. Because he's...
Get it?
Get it? Yeah. So she's sitting in her chair, and it's the scene where the camera's going around and around and around. And you see out the window as the seasons go by. But also, she's like, everyone I see reminds me of Edward. And... everyone is kind of dressed up with the hair and the makeup and the same clothes, and I got a big laugh out of me.
Well, one of them is an Afghan hound, so how are you not going to laugh at that? And it'll be like a couple, and one of them is more Edward than the other, but they're both close to. It's good.
Yeah.
This is where you think, oh, they spent some money on this.
Yeah.
Because the costuming is decent. Like there are a lot of like the set dressing is good. The house, the Swan house looks like the Swan house. Like the sets are good. The twists and turns it takes into like good like feeding the new moon climax in pretty good.
Yeah.
Because it's set up that prom is going to be a very big deal.
Right, because so in this, instead of them going to Italy, prom is a vampire-themed prom that's set up to be like Italy, where the vampire festival happens, which, I don't know, pretty budget-conscious solution to that. I can see if you were going to make an actual movie of the first two books, you could do that and just have the Volturi show up in America for no reason.
Hey, why not? And the justification is that they won't miss a good party because, like Ella says, like, say what you will about the Volturi, but those guys do know how to party. And this is when we cut to like Ken Jeong and the other two, like doing keg stands and having a great time, and eventually winning prom Jane.
They just cast a little severe girl to play Jane, which just made me chuckle every time she was on screen.
Okay, there is the joke that works for me. The single joke that works for me in Breaking Wind is has to do with child casting for vampires. So there you go.
It was which is also clearly just friends of the cast or siblings of the production team because they're not actors, but it is pretty funny.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much just the two stories back to back. It just ends with them being attacked by Twilight fans or Edward getting attacked by Team
Edward,
Jacob.
Team Jacob stuff. I think does he get hit in the head with like a mace? It's like
you find out that Edward dates Lady Gaga at one point. That's not very funny. Like,
no.
But clearly the people at the time would have been like, haha, it's Lady Gaga.
Like the part he opens his shirt and he's very shiny and he's like, no, that's just my bling.
Yeah.
Pretty
Buffy
funny.
the Vampire Slayer shows up at one point, I think. Or is that in Breaking Wind?
She looks really bad, though. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, it's this one. And she's wearing a shirt that says Buffy because there's no way anyone would have known that's who she was supposed to be. It says Buffy on it. And she's like, hey. And then she walks off and you're like, all right.
What if it had been Sarah Michelle Gellar?
That's the only way it would have worked. Instead, it was an actress named Crystal Mayo.
Oh, yeah.
Crystal Mayo. Does not have her own Wikipedia page, but she's out there. You know, if you want to see Crystal Mayo, she's an artist, I guess, now. A visual... No, wait, that's a different Crystal Mayo. There are several Crystal Mayos on Instagram.
This is the most, like, mid-movie research I've done of actors in anything we've ever covered. Because there are some people as desperate to know if they've done anything else. Not because they were bad, but because they were so weirdly specific in their performance. Like, we'll talk about Jacob. We have to talk about Jacob in Breaking Wind. Because he's doing something so weird and singular.
Yeah.
Like, this has to be his thing. Like, he has to be in a comedy troupe or something.
So, like, yeah, Dave Foley shows up as the principal for no reason.
Yeah, that was weird.
Dom DeLuise's son, David DeLuise, has an extended scene as a fisherman. But he was on Wizards of Waverly Place. Like, one of the actors was on That's So Raven. One of the
Annalise Vanderpool. That was really distracting for me.
Ariel Pebbles from the Vampire Diaries. Like,
she's good.
Yeah.
She's a long-running character, too.
Mm-hmm. So, like, these are actors. A lot of these are actors who have done a lot of work.
It's a lot of working actors. It's a lot of people who have done many or, like, several episode arcs on long-running TV shows. No one's, like... There's no one in here where I'm like, oh, they're awful and I don't want to see... Like, there's nobody that...
There's actually actors in both of these movies who might be better than some of the actors in the actual films.
I'm not going to argue with that. There are people, like, I never want to badmouth people too much, but, like, there are a few performers in the Twilight movies that just aren't doing anything, or what they're doing is really irritating. And I didn't have that with these, in part because they're stock characters, so it's harder to be annoying. But, like, the Jacob boy in this movie, I think, is very earnest and cute, and he does the Jacob thing in a way that really sells me. Oh, the homophobic joke that I loved. Like, I'm
just gonna wait. Hold on. I'm making a YouTube clip of you just saying that. The homophobic joke that I loved.
As a queer woman, I'm allowed to think this is funny. There's a bit where they cut to the werewolves for the first time, and they're all wearing short denim shorts. They're all wearing, like, hot pants, and they all do a choreographed dance routine to It's Raining Men. And the thing is, initially, it's not even really a gay joke. It's just men doing a choreographed dance. Yeah. And the use of that song made me laugh.
I would say that even through both of these movies, the amount of gay panic jokes is kept very minimum. And I think it's probably because they felt it was too obvious a well to go to with these. We do get a full-on kiss between Jacob and Edward. That's just that. It's just a full-on kiss, and there's no panic. There's no, like, ew. It's just like,
it kind of feels like they wanted Bella to deliver the nonsense line, "I'm Switzerland," and they were like, "What's the best way we can do this? Why don't we have the boys smooch?"
Yep, they go for it, and it works.
It's fine. It's fine.
But what's not fine is Breaking Wind.
I hated this so much. I have rarely been more like, I can't believe we're doing this to ourselves than when I was watching this movie. Like,
so, from the director of Saving Ryan's Privates,
cool.
The 41-year-old virgin who knocked up Sarah Marshall and felt super bad about it.
I remember that one.
Wait, also 30 Nights of Paranormal Activity with the Devil Inside the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Badass 2 Badasses, Badasses on the Bayou, and the upcoming Binged to Death, Craig Moss, writer, director, actor, University of California, Los Angeles graduate.
That's not a bad school.
Nope. It produces filmmakers, apparently. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Everybody's got to keep going somewhere. Breaking Wind, written and directed by Craig Moss, starring no one with their own Wikipedia page except Danny Trejo.
Yeah, this one was harder to do any kind of research on any of the people. I did a lot of hunting and pecking on IMDb. Not a fan of the performance from the woman playing Bella. It just doesn't really... This movie goes to the sex jokes way more often and in a much more vulgar way, I thought. It also frames her as kind of like she fools around. Like, she's not loyal to Edward. Like, it's so weird that I found myself getting twitchy about them straying too far from the mythos.
Because one of the gags is that because Edward's not letting her have sex with him, she just has sex with Jacob.
Yeah, in front of him. And there's a way this would have worked for me.
Okay, look. Okay. There's a gag in the beginning where she dreams about her grandma that actually made me laugh.
Okay, that wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Because the woman playing the grandma seems like a very sweet old woman in reality, and the things they have her doing, the simulating of sex in her dream it actually made me chuckle, and I felt really bad about it.
A thing that I was thinking about was how the casting process for that woman went, because she's pretty funny, just being an old lady.
Yes. This is also the more rated R of the two films.
Oh, yeah.
This also is... I've got a few compliments to make. But one of the biggest compliments is, of course, the little Cullens. We love them.
I thought you were gonna say something real for a second. Like, they have the joke of she got recast, and they show a picture.
There is, yes, a Bryce Dallas Howard joke.
That joke did get me. It's like, movie, you're all right for this one moment. Okay, the little Cullens. So this was a time in history when there are a lot of shows on TLC that were about people simply because they were little people.
Yes.
People who have dwarfism living their lives, and like, honestly, get that I scared myself. Like, get that paper, those people. Like, if you want your life to be a documentary and TLC is going to pay you tons of money,
right?
You don't have to change that much, sure. But it was this weirdly exploitative thing, and given the history of people with dwarfism, it felt really gross. And so, with Breaking Wind, the idea was, what if there's like a rival group of vampires who are just small versions of the Cullens?
Now, that's the joke. They do get lines.
They do.
They are not directly mocked for being little people.
No.
Except in the sense that they are simply little people who the Cullens don't like because they're stealing their they're stealing their whole shtick.
Yeah, it's their whole deal.
They are as much characters as anybody else in this movie is, and I was delighted by their costumes. I thought, why wouldn't you cast little person actors in roles that are just vampires? Like, they're just let them be. There's a little person actor, I can't remember his name, who's one of the leads in Bordello of Blood, and it's never called attention to him being a little person. He's just one of the, I think, villains or something. He's just one of the archaeologists who unearths something. I don't remember how with the plot of Bordello of Blood, but I remember watching that in the theater because I saw it in the theater and being like, oh wow, they just cast this guy because he's awesome. Like, he's really good in the role. And it doesn't matter that he's a little person, even though you could have called attention to it. Why can't you do that in movies like Twilight? Like, just let him play a role, for crying out loud.
In theory, there are much worse ways they could have done this. Like, there are way more offensive ways they could have done this. My favorite joke in this movie is the Volturi is played by children, and they all have speech impediments, and they're all very cute and say really violent things, one by one, and it sort of feels like Take Your Kid to Work Day, but I found that very endearing.
So, Breaking Wind tells
what
the
I'm
story...
saying is the little Cullens could have played the Volturi, and then they'd be...
Yes. Yeah, yes.
Would have been bad.
So, as you noted, this is telling the story of Eclipse, right? This is Eclipse, with just a little bit of Breaking Dawn at the very end.
Yeah, pretty much 1-to-1. It's just that the wedding and the baby happen at the end.
Right. Which, as you remember, doesn't have a whole lot of plot. Like, it doesn't...
No.
So you're really just forcing a lot of sex jokes into the story of Eclipse, including Carlisle, not Carlisle, Charlie again being maybe gay, maybe
He's
bisexual.
Grosser in this one.
There's also, but both films have Charlie kind of being sexually inappropriate with the Bella character as well. There is a parody in this movie of the sex talk between Charlie and Bella.
There is.
That is played so straight that I was like, this almost works as comedy because both actors are just being very intense about it. Then it, of course, goes off the rails.
I mean, that works for a joke as a joke for me in Eclipse. Like, I think it's the funniest joke in the movie Eclipse. But that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Breaking Wind. The other big jokey joke is farts. What if they happened a lot?
What if farts happen? In a way that almost seems integrated into the plot, but really isn't. Like, the werewolves fart a lot, and then they smell their hand, like they cup it into their hand. I hate even like demonstrating that.
I think you're wrong that it doesn't work into the plot because at the end when Bella saves the day, it's because she farts.
But all of a sudden the vampires are attracted to farts instead of blood. Like,
yeah, they just.
I was hoping the mythology would be cleared up a little bit more. Like, work it into the lore a little bit better for me, people.
You mentioned that the lore dump of werewolf stuff is very extensive. Now, it's their pull in this movie. Yes, you've got your Diedrich Bader, you've got your Ken Jeong, but what if Danny Trejo was in your bad vampire parody movie?
Is he playing Billy or is he playing? Who gives that monologue in the movie? I think it's
the head of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's in a wheelchair.
So it's a Billy composite, is what.
Which I think is probably because Danny Trejo was like, "I'll be in your movie if I don't have to A, stand, B, walk." So put me in a wheelchair. He doesn't have to
do much, but he does sell it. Because he's Danny Trejo. He's not a bad actor.
Danny Trejo, who even in terrible films, and Danny Trejo has been in some terrible films, never gives less than his all.
Is he one of the actors who just says yes to everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because why not? Like, I think he's one of those actors who's like, I was in prison, I lived a rough life, I'm allowed to be an actor, I will never turn down an opportunity because when does this party end? And I think that's kind of his whole thing. It's like, of course you do anything that you're offered. You get paid, and I get to have fun on screen with some people. And I think they had fun together. But what you brought up was the point that I made, which is that the telling of the legend of the shapeshifters in this movie actually uses more of the story from the book than the actual movie of Eclipse does. In Eclipse, it starts off with him going, so we're all shapeshifters. And one day a cold guy showed up. Whereas, which is what happens in Eclipse. And in this, it actually is like, we had a magic user who XYZ, and it actually goes in. It's almost like someone on set read the novel. Someone read this book.
Somebody is pulling the strings here where they're like, they're pretending that they hate Twilight, but secretly they love Twilight and they want to work on something Twilight adjacent, even if it's making fun of Twilight. And this is, I do want to talk about Jacob, because you said this is your favorite Jacob portrayal.
Yeah, I will say that of all the Jacobs, from the official Jacob, your Jacob, I think of him, because you were best friends with him as a child.
Yeah, Taylor Lautner, pals.
Taylor Lautner to Vampire Suck Jacob to Breaking Winds Jacob. He's my favorite Jacob, and I think it's because all the werewolves in Breaking Wind are large men. Like, they are not washboard ab men.
Yeah, they're not cut.
They are big men with big bellies. And the joke seems to be they're sexy anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, they have their shirts off the whole time, and everyone treats them as if they were the sexiest guys, which might be we're supposed to think that's funny, but instead it just comes across as like inadvertently body positive. Like,
it's weirdly earnest without, I think, meaning to be. One of the running gags is that Jacob will cite his six-pack while not wearing a shirt, and he doesn't have one of those. But he's also, like, it's not one of these that, like, I don't look at him, I mean, I don't look at any medically fat person in disgust. That's not really my whole deal. But he's not, like, you wouldn't, it's not so much. Like, it's not that he is, like, he's, like, a pretty normal-sized dude.
Yeah,
he's big.
And this isn't Mike Myers, Austin Powers territory.
Yeah, it's not
We're not
laughing. It's like
Yeah.
It's just a guy. It's just a normal guy. And
All the werewolves, they're just these big guys, and they get to be big guys and run around and act goofy. And I'm all about that. I'm like, yeah, I want to see some big funny guys just sort of like love, like play with their bodies and like
yeah.
be funny and fart into their hands, I guess. I like him though because he is so earnest. The
He is
actor
very earnest. I think both the Vampires Suck Jacob and this Jacob are way more earnest than Taylor Lautner.
I think he's a better actor than Taylor Lautner. I think he's just a I think the Breaking Wind werewolves are better actors than all of the actual Twilight werewolves. I think that they're in the game, they're into it. They're having a good time. The jokes don't work, but they're just I believe they're friends with each other, as opposed to the Twilight werewolves who seem uncomfortable on screen most of the time.
Also, the girl who plays Bella has a lot of fun with the guy who plays Jacob. Like they're bouncing off each other in scenes is like some of the more interesting stuff because she's also into him, which helps. Like she's more into him than she is in actual Twilight. There's nothing weird or non-consensual about this. Like she's
right.
Just, in part because she's horny. Like she really wants to have sex, and you know who's not going to have sex with her? Edward. That's part of the whole deal.
They also get around not being able to ride a motorcycle on screen, probably for liability reasons, by having the motorcycle not work, and so Bella has to just push it the whole time, which is I found pretty like at least like conceptually amusing.
It doesn't not have jokes. Like there are a couple of things that it didn't. I think the snort, like there were more snorts per minute in Vampires. Like I didn't think a lot of this was funny. A lot of it I found just like really off-putting and kind of icky. But it's the Jacob actor really is good, and that's what's so wild to me because like he was the one I hunted around for most after watching these. It was like, how is he not like having an early like Jonah Hill career? Like how is he not being in like gross out teens and 20 somethings comedies? Like this shit happened.
I think because he's a person of color.
He's a good point.
Like he's a legitimate person of color, as are all the werewolves, I believe. As opposed to the Vampire Suck, where Ike Barinholtz is playing was playing Jacob's dad, Billy. But Ike Barinholtz, I always give a pass because he's a funny guy.
I'm always happy to see him.
Always happy to see him or his brother. There's a weird running gag in this about TMZ that I don't get.
Really hated this. And I think part of why I hated it is it's been done better in different movies, and you actually have to have an angle on it for it to be funny. It can't just be like, I'm sure, is it in Popstar that Will Arnett is the editor of TMZ?
I don't remember, but maybe. TMZ was also used to great effect in the movie Nope. Relatively recently, like there's a whole TMZ subplot there that actually works if you're making fun of TMZ. This is just like cutting to TMZ footage and having TMZ like follow the characters around at times for no payoff. Like it just happens.
Yeah, it doesn't. It is Will Arnett is the guy with the cup in Popstar, and the cup gets bigger and bigger. I'm pretty sure that's part of it. He has like a crazy straw at one point, and that's also just funnier people, and it's a better concept because it's an actual like pop star that they're making fun of the whole time. This is just, this is weird. It doesn't work. It falls really flat. I mean, I don't think fart jokes are funny, so most of the humor falls really flat for me. It's when they're making a more incisive reference to Twilight that it kind of gets me more. The thing is, I actually think, like, okay, so the way Bella saves the day is she eats a piece of white cake, which is the thing that gives her the worst gas.
Which is the thing Jacob gave her.
He's like, why. That's what I was going to say. It's funny that the graduation present Jacob gives her is just a big slice of white cake, and not a nicely cut one, just like a big
handful
blob
of cake
that she's carrying around for a lot of the rest of the movie.
He gives her a piece of cake in his hand just so she can say, I can't eat this, it makes me flatulent, so that in the end of the movie, she can force the cake down her throat so she starts farting to distract the vampires. That's a payoff, okay? I will say it's not a good payoff.
There's a through line there. I'm not gonna take that away from them. And it's fun to watch her carrying it around. Let's see, what else happens in this? Almost nothing. Very little. It's just the plot of Eclipse, which is not a lot, and they really condense it down to basically nothing.
They get around special effects by having the wolves never transform into wolves. They're just big guys who run around.
Yep. Sometimes they also like chase things and like watch dog shows as a means of getting aroused.
Yeah.
Imprinting is just ejaculating.
That's right. They get through that. They have the whole imprinting conversation, but it's just as you said.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but it had to be said. The tent scene is when Jacob Jacob and Bella just have sex while Edward is talking to Jacob about what a great guy he is. Also,
it's pretty funny. I will say that this movie's biggest crime is the end, which is just making fun of Twilight fans for like 10 minutes.
I hated that.
It's all of a sudden, at the last second, the movie takes a hard right turn into just being mean. Like it's just mean to kids who like Twilight.
Just cuts to a series of people reacting to the Eclipse trailer, which is actually something that I personally find it very endearing to see someone love something that's inoffensive. So that really bummed me out. Is also a weird way to pad out your runtime. Just show me more outtakes. Always show me more outtakes.
There are outtakes. There are outtakes in this that aren't actually like really like they're not
funny.
They're just here's a take. Like here's a take and then it says cut and then it goes to another take. I think there's one time where someone laughs.
I gotta be honest, I was hoping that Vampires Suck would have them because Starving Games did. I was like, you gotta bring this back.
There is a director's cut of this as well, or a unrated cut, which is 8 seconds longer and has one different take of something. And I don't even remember what it was, but it's the unrated version. It's not even worth even pursuing. It made me upset that I even looked it up. I was like, oh, what? That was a waste of 5 minutes of my time.
I mean, this one also just like throws in, like sprinkles in some racism here and there.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that I was like, this is weirdly offensive against, like, do we really have to bring like different populations into this at all? Like, must we?
Yeah, it gets uncomfortable. I liked the training sequence where the Cullens are training everyone being trained in how to fight, because I thought that their guy who played what's his face?
Jasper. He's a better actor than Jasper in the movies. There, I said it. He keeps the southern accent the whole time. He has a very silly demeanor that I like. They follow the scene really closely. Like, weirdly closely.
Now, I know that, as always, we have a hard out today. And I did want to cover a few more Twilight parodies that I dipped into.
That out is not the hardest of outs today, but yes.
That's fine. I want us to make sure that we do talk about the Harvard Lampoon's Night. Okay, so there are several books that parody the books that are 300-page novels. These are not pamphlets. These are full novels. So I started reading Nightlight, the Twilight Harvard Lampoon parody, which is set in...
I remember Nightlight existing in culture because people think it's pretty funny, from what I can understand.
I actually was laughing at it because it's decently written.
Well, you showed me an excerpt and there was some good stuff about Bella's clumsiness, and
I got so bored with it though, because like it's literally the length of a novel, and after a while I was like, I get it, and then it stops being a Twilight parody and just kind of starts being its own thing. But As I did with the Hunger Games, I started keeping a spreadsheet of all the names, like the parody names. Was unable to continue because most of these books don't actually parody the names. Nightlight, instead of Bella Swan, it's Belle Goose. Get it? Instead of Edward Cullen, it's Edwart Mullen. And then Jacob's never mentioned. He's not really a character in it. Jessica's character is named Lulu because Bella can't remember her name. And none of the other characters get names. Literally none of the other characters get names.
I mean, credit to Vampires Suck for calling the Cullens the Sullens.
They're the Sullens.
It's a slightly more sophisticated joke than a lot of them.
There is the novel New Moan, which has my favorite Bella parody name, which is... Her name is Heffa Lump, which isn't particularly clever, but
it's really good. You're right.
Sporks in Nightlight is called Switchblade. In most other parodies, it's called Sporks, which is pretty obvious. In New Moan, it's called Spatula, which did make me laugh.
I like that better.
I mentioned earlier the Mad Magazine parodies. Again, there's only 5 or 6 characters actually are ever named in it. Usually in the old Mads, there's a splash page, which is like, hi, I'm so-and-so.
Yeah,
Hi,
I remember.
So you get the names. They don't do that and they cover all the movies at once. Her name is Rubella Wan, I guess. Edward Cullen is Deadwood Sullen. Jacob is never given a last name, but he's known as Jackwad, and he's not named until like the very end. Renesmee is given a name. She's named Repress Me, which, I guess is the thing. The Volturi are called the Zamboni.
Okay, I like that.
Victoria's given a name, Vindictiva. And strangely enough, the only other named character in the Mat is Riley, who is given the name Whiny, which, okay. He's given
I like Vindictiva because that really pins down her character.
That's her character. They name her once, just on the sort of like as a, but not Charlie. None of them. Esme, Alice, none of them are ever named. They are just there in the Mad Magazine parodies, and in most of the novels, they just sort of brush aside those characters and call her like Dad and Mom, and that's it. Almost every novel, though, has a joke about what Renee's new husband's job is. And it's, of course, never a minor league baseball player. It's like he's a Tiddlywinks player or something. It's always like a ridiculous non-job. And I found it endearing that they went out of their way to be like, they're gonna want that joke, so they do that. To be
fair, Phil's job being a minor league baseball player is funny.
Pretty funny, yeah.
It's a choice she made, and there's so many ways you can justify someone moving to a new city. She's like, clearly we really have to explain why Renee would want to leave her beloved Arizona.
Yeah,
it's good.
So. Beyond that, there's also Twilight the Musical, which was a parody of the Twilight series, which was a YouTube series. It was parodied like 1 billion times on after Mad TV, there was an animated Mad on Cartoon Network that had Twi-School Musical, which you could probably guess. The Big Fang Theory.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They had Twilight Staking Dawn, which was a crossover with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Buffy shows up at the wedding to kill Edward and Bella. Which
Buffy would never kill Edward. She'd fall in love. I will. This is the hill I die on. But I understand the temptation to pull the two of them together. It's kind of the old guard of 90s, early zeros vampire series with new guard.
But It doesn't make any sense. If anything, they'd be friends.
They would be friends. I mean, Bella has a distinctly Willow-esque quality about her where she's like, This is pretty much what Willow does the first, like, 5 seasons of Buffy.
Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, New Moon, the novel, and its follow-up about Heffa Lump.
That's good.
Is credited to Steph 4D Mayo. Steph 4D Mayo. I guess because she's, like, very white, I guess is the joke. There was a parody sequel to Breaking Dawn called Twilight Daybreak, which is like what happens after Breaking Dawn. But a lot of these involve like just parodying like Dancing with the Stars and stuff like that.
What's so weird about this is I did not recall the Hunger Games having a lot of parodies in its wake. I remember all of these happening. I remember Daybreak. I remember Nightlight. Like,
but what's interesting is there's a Nickelodeon parody.
What?
That I'm almost I don't know if it's any good, but it's called Liar, Liar, Vampire. And it's about a girl who is convinced that this strange boy that she has a crush on is a vampire, but he's not. And he has to continue pretending to be a vampire in a very Twilight way because this girl has a crush on him thinking he's a vampire. It's called Liar, Liar, Vampire, and it takes place in a town called Forksley. And that's all I know about it.
Kind of cute.
But I was like, there's where you go with your parody, is you parody the concept. You parody, like, let's take this to its logical extreme. If you want to make fun of Twilight, if it's permeated the culture so much that people become convinced they're in a Twilight scenario, to me, that's a good parody. It's kind of what's the slasher movie? So-and-so versus evil.
Tucker and Dale versus evil.
Tucker and Dale.
What a wonderful movie.
You're not actually in a slasher movie, but everyone's convinced they are. That's a great parody film because it's playing it straight, but also satirizing what you're making fun of. Unfortunately for this, what I was talking about with my coworker is that because these are movies aimed at just sort of middle America, people who might not be that familiar with it, you can only parody. You tend to just make fun of the same stuff with this, which is it's kind of gay at times. They don't have sex. Isn't it weird nobody notices they're vampires? At least Mad Magazine had the stones to say, how can Edward possibly get you pregnant? You've already established they have no blood and they don't breathe. How can they ejaculate? Like they say it in the Mad Magazine parody. They're just like, this doesn't make any biological sense. If he doesn't have blood, he cannot get an erection. That's how erections work. And they're like,
but we know that a lot of the vampires are having a lot of sex. I don't want to interrogate that. It doesn't make any sense,
Christy, is what I'm saying. It doesn't make any sense. We found the flaw.
The one loophole in this entire plot hole in this entire series.
I think that the Vampire Chronicles, I think Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles addresses that in some way. Like, I think they say, like, yeah, we can't have actual sex because there's no blood flow. Mm-hmm. So we have to, like, do other things to get aroused. But they do say a lot in the Twilight books that they don't breathe. They don't pump blood. Like, they make a point of that. Like, one of the best parts of Breaking Dawn Part 2 is when Bella has to learn to be a person again because she doesn't. And they're like, you have to pretend to breathe every now and then. You have to cross and uncross your legs because we don't get uncomfortable.
No one sits up that straight. Or it's like humans don't sit up that straight.
Yeah, like blink every once in a while or people will notice. Like,
and then when she does blink, it's very funny because she does it a lot and theatrically.
Yeah, that's funny stuff. But again, one of the hardest things about making fun of these series is Stephanie Meyer was aware of the absurdities of her concept. Mm-hmm. She was aware of how weird a lot of this stuff was and called it out herself and called it out in universe. And so a lot of these parodies are just pointing out things that have already been pointed out canonically by the characters.
Yeah. There's never been a good parody movie since Airplane, so.
Since Air, you don't think that the Naked Gun, at least?
Oh,
The
I love
first
the
one
Naked Gun movies. Okay, the problem is we don't have Leslie Nielsen anymore.
Well, the problem is we don't have the Zucker brothers. Well, one of them went insane and like became a hard right filmmaker.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
The problem is that they would craft their films. Like they would take the time to work out these jokes and make sure the timing was perfect. And they came from a theater background and they understood like live comedy timing. It's a lot harder than you think. Like
parody and satire are significantly harder, I think, than a lot of people think. I co-wrote a few spoofs basically when I was in college, which is I guess a longer story for another time. But I'm reasonably funny in the day-to-day. It is so much harder to be funny when you're skewering one specific thing and doing it over and over again. And like sustaining humor is hard. So credit to Vampires Suck for making me laugh like a fair number of times.
Yeah.
Breaking Wind really got me with the tiny children being Volturi. that was great.
No credit to them for anything else. Absolutely no credit to them for anything else. But I guess kudos for making movies. Kudos for giving paychecks to actors. Kudos for, I guess, not harming anyone on set.
Probably.
I don't remember any stories coming out about anyone getting hurt on these sets.
I would have loved to see some of these actors in other things, because I do think some of them did a pretty bang-up job with not a lot to work with. And always going to be happy to see Diedrich Bader's face.
And are we probably the nicest people who've ever talked about these movies? I think we probably are.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I wasn't nice.
You were very nice.
Don't tell me that.
This wasn't just a compliment sandwich. This was like a compliment, like, charcuterie board. Like, there was so many compliments to pick and choose from.
I'm so worried about how much I'm going to love Midnight Sun.
So yeah, by the way, everyone, our next coverage is Midnight Sun, which I've already started reading. And spoiler alert, I'm really enjoying this book.
Oh, I know I'm going to, because as I've mentioned, I've not read this book, but I read the leaked first draft that prevented her from releasing the book for years and years. And let me tell you how bummed I was that it was cut so short. I'm very excited.
And let me tell you that Stephanie Meyer's learned a lot about writing a main character in the years between Twilight and Midnight Sun. So it's already a better written novel than Twilight was, just because
everyone can't wait.
She's grown as a writer. So I'm looking forward to discussing that with you. I'm looking forward to discussing the choices she makes in gender swapping, like why some things are gender swapped, some aren't. I'm looking forward to discussing with you how she's refined a lot of the plot points, how she's clarified a lot of plot points. I'm looking forward to discussing Midnight Sun with you and having people listen in on our conversation.
I think that'll be really nice. What are we saying goodbye to?
I want to say goodbye to, oh, I have it right here. I want to say goodbye to, Frank Pacheco.
Is that the guy who played Jacob?
It's the guy who played Jacob.
Yeah.
I want to say goodbye to Frank Pacheco, everyone's favorite Jacob on
Goodbye,
screen.
Frank Pacheco.
Goodbye, Frank.